Today on Locked On Red Wings, Dylan Larkin proves yet again he is the heart and soul of this team in Player Evaluations Part 2.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm formerly of 97 Won the Ticket, while Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Scotty, happy Wednesday. Are you looking forward to another episode of Player Evaluations?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about it a little bit yesterday and off air, but like this is always such a fascinating conversation, and obviously, I don't look forward to the end of the season, and especially the way this one ended was kind of bitter. But this is always such a fascinating conversation because you realize how much your expectations do change on players throughout the season, or how, like super high or low you were on a player back, last summer. Like we had this conversation when it was warm out, and it's warm out again. Like it's a long time ago that these conversations were had. So it's always a really fascinating one for sure.
Yeah, it's fun to do too, because it's nice to look back and see what you thought about a player going into the season and what you really got. Because sometimes what we think about a player is completely off base from what they really are. That's not the case with where we start, though. We start today with the captain, Dylan Larkin, and I think he probably gave us exactly, if not more, than what we were expecting this season once you take in all the adversity that he went through, right, Scotty?
Yeah, no, this is, for me, this is like pretty easily in the top two. I think that I'm pretty okay with exceeding expectations. Yeah, man, like this is he has the unfortunate, and it's not actually unfortunate. It's just, unfortunate in this arbitrary, very subjective conversation of, just us two idiots talking. But like, he has the unfortunate title of having the highest expectations on the team going into the year. So I think that, he came into this season, obviously being the 1C, the captain, et cetera, and planning on being a huge part. And, the fact that he held being a point a game player throughout pretty much the entire season, scored 30 goals again, obviously the adversity that he dealt with throughout the season. And look, I think the biggest thing for me on the ice is just like, look how bad the team was when he wasn't playing like that. And I'm not sure that has too much to do with this conversation necessarily. That's more of a value conversation than an expectations conversation. But at the end of the day, man, like this is a guy that had the a lot of the organization on his shoulders, and still went out there and was, again, like dang near point a game pace for pretty much the entire season, and broke 30 again despite missing time. So I think that this is, for me, a pretty easy, exceeding expectations at a minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Dylan Larkin did a new career high in goals, not just broke 30 goals for the fourth time in his career in the third consecutive season. It was a new career high in goals despite only playing 68 games. And he was over a point per game by just 1 point, but he was still over a point per game for the first time in his career. The last few years, he's flirted with it, been just like a point or two behind pace. And then again, kind of like what you said, he proved kind of by being absent how vital he was to the team, right? And now, granted, in March, I know that the flu was ravaging the locker room as well, which didn't help lessen the impact of not having Larkin in the lineup. But, he lost him in December too, I think it was, for a little bit. And you saw then, how much different the lineup looks without him. We talked about it yesterday. Without Dylan Larkin in the lineup, like, you have no center depth. It might have been on Friday. You have no center depth without Dylan Larkin. And so having him in the lineup healthy, he proved time and time again that he is the heart and soul of this team. When he came back from injury in March, the very first game he came back, he scored a goal. Like, that's how immediate the impact is with Dylan Larkin. And if he had played a full 80, you and I are 82. You and I are in agreement that he probably would have scored 40 goals, which if he had managed to play 82 and scored 40 goals, he would have gone into above and beyond expectations. But
For
I'm not
sure.
going to put a guy in above and beyond expectations because of prorated stats. I love my prorations, but
Hey,
I'm not that
we
crazy.
are huge on pro rating stats here. Huge.
But no, I think just when you include all the adversity he went through on a personal level to still come out, create a new career high in goals, break 30 goals despite only playing 68 games and being over a point per game player, I think that is very easily exceeding expectations. And I think you said it. I can't remember if you said it here or off the air because a little behind the curtain, we failed to record this like 6 times. This is like the 7th time we've hit restart recording. You mentioned in one of those failed recordings, you mentioned that he had the highest expectations of anyone on the team and that is probably what's holding him back from being placed higher, right? Because he's the captain. He's scored 30 goals in 2 prior seasons. We were like, okay, he's got to replicate that to even meet expectations. And he did more than that. So exceeding expectations is a pretty easy spot for him to go.
Yeah.
Next up, Scotty, on the opposite end of the spectrum, Justin Holl.
Yeah, I don't even think this is a very long conversation. I think this is pretty much a slam dunk failing expectations. Yeah, you brought him in to be in your, bottom 4 defensively and be, I would imagine, a fixture there, given how much you paid him and are paying him. And now we're having conversations about, like get him, find a way to cut ties with him, whether it's a trade or a buyout or whatever. And I think the conversation surrounding him is like find a way to I don't know, this sounds like super dramatic, but like get him off the team going into next season. I think that this is a pretty easy failing.
I don't think it's over dramatic to stay at all that like if you're not going to play him, you have to get him off the roster because you can't pay a guy $3 million to sit in the press box. It's just not, you just can't do it. And I mean, he played 38 games this season, was a healthy scratch most games. His average ice time went from 20 minutes last year with Toronto, where he played 80 games, to 15 in this game. He was only getting offensive zone deployments. He was getting the weakest competition. Like, they did not trust Justin Holl. And whether that is a failure of roster construction, because you could make the argument that that's just a plain bad Yzerman signing. Like, this is probably the signing I'm most critical of in Yzerman's tenure as general manager. But also, like, if he's not able to get into the lineup, that's his own fault as well, because you're paying this guy $3 million a year. How are you not capable, especially as a right D-man, where we need right D-man, not capable of cracking the lineup? So, I mean, this is, like you said, easily a failing expectations. Let's try to squeeze one more in before going to break, Scotty, because the next one I think is pretty easy too. That's Ville Husso. He spent most of the season hurt, and we're not going to hold an injury against somebody's grade because that's not fair. You don't try to get injured. That's just unfortunate. But based on what we did see out of Ville Husso this season, Scotty, and based on what our expectations were, where would you rank him?
I think this is below expectations at a minimum. I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily just straight up failing, but I could hear the argument for it, I guess. Regardless, this is below expectations for me. This is, going into the year, we were talking about how each of the last 2 years, we were talking about how, the goalie duo that we had was hopefully going to be really solid and was going to produce and whatnot. And Husso just, outside of the first 2 months of 2 seasons ago, just hasn't been that really at all. And I still think that if he was healthy, he would have helped this team pretty dramatically. I trust him more than Reimer, I think, on a start-to-start basis. But in terms of what we were expecting going into the year, even injury aside, I mean, we were talking about getting Lyon more playing time when all 3 were healthy. So I think that's really all that needs to be said about that. I think this is below expectations for me.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much a slam dunk below expectations. He had an .892 save percentage, I believe it was, this season in the just 19 games he played. 3.55 goals against average. His glove hand suspect. I don't want to go break down exactly why, but I mean, this is a goalie who the organization still talks like he's the number one for going forward next year. I don't necessarily think I have that much faith in him, but I do think he and Lyon can be an effective tandem because Lyon proves in short bursts he can be excellent. The problem is he got overburdened this season, and that caused him to collapse.
Yeah.
But
and
if
if
you
your
can,
Duco partner has an 8.92 again, then he's going to get overburdened again.
but if Ville, who's like, it's very clearly below expectations, and you could make the argument failing expectations, but I'm holding out hope that if he had played a full season, he wouldn't have been 8.92 bad. But I guess we're cheating our own rules there. But below expectations, failing expectations, wherever you want to put him. But in the short time we saw, I was definitely disappointed that he didn't have at least a 900 save percentage. 8.92 is not very good.
For sure.
We're going to get to a quick break. When we return, we'll keep this conversation going. We're definitely not talking about Klim Kostin. He's not on the roster anymore. I'm using the same template I used from the mid-season. Actually, that means I have to add Simon Edmonds.
That's my dog.
Sorry, buddy. He's not on the team.
Above and beyond.
Yeah. he played pretty well for the Sharks. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings, going to keep talking about this. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. With eBay Motors, they have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Also got to talk to you guys today about Game Time. Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. And they have last-minute deals that save you up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, so much more. Because Game Time's not just for games. It's also for things like that concerts and comedy, like we were just saying. And with flash deals, you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or events. And zone deals save you even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. And with the lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find seats in a different section for less. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are doing player evaluations, and next up on the docket, I believe that's Alex Lyon. It's actually kind of hard to tell because I'm used to him having more hair, but I'm pretty sure that's the other goalie in this conversation, and that's Alex Lyon. And this one is a tale, I feel, of two seasons, right? Like when we did this in midseason evaluations, I'm pretty sure we did. Let me look it up. I'm pretty sure we had him in above and beyond. Yeah, we had him in above and beyond. I think March and April definitely brought that down a little bit.
Well, I would argue that it depends on what expectations we're talking about. If we're talking about the expectations that were had in February or March, the rest of the way, then yes, obviously I would agree with you. But if we're truly doing preseason expectations, there is still, in my mind, zero argument that it's not above and beyond. We have to remember that going into the season, this was the third stringer that didn't play for like the first month of the season, is 30 years old. A lot, mostly AHL time outside of the obviously great postseason he had with Florida the season prior, and did his production dip? Yes, but he was still the literal like workhorse starter the entire second half of the season. And again, like I understand production dipped. I'm not like oblivious to that. I'm not saying that didn't happen. I completely understand and agree with that. But if we're truly basing this off preseason expectations, I think the guy that we were like, yeah, we should try to clear him through waivers to get him in Grand Rapids probably went above and beyond still.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, you make a convincing argument. I'm not gonna lie. I was gonna say that he came down from above and beyond to just exceeding expectations, but you're right. I mean, our thought of Alex Lyon coming into the season was he was going to be the Grand Rapids Griffins starter. And not only was he not that, he was the Detroit Red Wings starter for the bulk of the season. And he did finish the year with a .904 save percentage, which is just 1 point higher than the league average as well. So you could make the argument he's an above average starter in the NHL. But of course, we watch it game to game. We know that he definitely fell off in March and April. But that was also
not denying that at all. Agreed.
Yeah, no, and I'm not trying to deny that either. But we also understand as people who watch every game, a lot of that has to do with the fact that he was worked into the ground. He had never had a workload like he had in this season. His career high starts in a single season at the NHL level was last year at 15 games. He started 44 games this year at the NHL level. Like, that is an insane amount of games played for him. So to do what he did in the time that he did it, yeah, you know what? I was going to say exceeding expectations, but you convinced me he is above and beyond still. Even with March and April where he wasn't as good, that's still above and beyond what we were expecting of him coming into the start of the season. And then just January and February.
He really is kind of like the epitome of the Red Wings team with this conversation. Like if you're asking about expectations going into the season, they exceeded them, right? Or they, you know what I mean? Like this was, we talked about it, right? This was, this was a successful year. And then if you do, did he exceed expectations? Was it a success from, the end of February on? Then obviously it's a no, right? Because expectations do change mid-season. But if our starting point is preseason, there's really, I don't think any doubt in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up on the list, Olli Maatta. Now this, man, I don't know if there is a player on the roster who I could say met expectations more than Olli Maatta.
I agree.
To be honest, I don't have a lot to say about Olli Maatta, which I mean means that I'll still ramble for 10 minutes because I have that dog in me. Olli Maatta is who he is. He is a defensive defenseman who plays a depth role on the team, and he did that all season long. He played 72 games with the Detroit Red Wings. I think he was sick at one point as well. I
think this is the poster child for meeting expectations. We talked about when he signed the extension, kind of what we expected out of him. We talked about going into the season, what we expected out of him being, that solidified third pair. Yeah, he was solid. He did what we expected him to do. So
yeah. I mean, depth defenseman, defensive defenseman, not asked to play a lot of hard minutes, given a lot of offensive zone deployments because his partner was Shane Gostisbehere. He was fine.
Yeah.
Fun fact, I got to see an Olli Maatta goal in person this season. He had 4, and I got to see the one against the Edmonton Oilers.
Nice. It's a rare sight.
It was a rare sight. That was one of the puck was just sitting on the goal line. He skated and just poked it into the net. It's great.
Nice.
Yeah. So we'll head to another quick break, and when we return, we'll get as many. Well, we'll stop at 3 more. We're not going to talk Raymond today. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. All right, game off. It's time to talk about Monopoly Go. You can team up with friends for timed tournaments with Monopoly Go, the classic twist on the classic game. And when you team up for those time tournaments, you can work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win, the more awesome prizes you will unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or robot pachinko machines. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. I'm catching Scotty Larkin right here.
You are?
Yeah,
oh,
dude.
yeah, you are, dude. I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, right.
Someone's slacking on his banner duty. Next up on our list is, what was that? What do you have in your hands? Oh, baseball. Is David Perron.
Baseball in my hand.
It's dirty as hell, dude.
Yeah, it's probably pretty old. I have like 6 more right behind me.
Fascinating. Anyways, David Perron. Man, I don't know. I almost, maybe you have to talk me out of this one, Scotty. I almost want to put him in. No, I can't. He somewhere between below and meeting expectations. And I can't tell if there's my internal bias is the reason why I think below or not. What, push back on me or agree with me? Make me decide.
Make me decide. I think this is a meeting. Is kind of where my head was at with this one. I think that we have to separate what our expectations were for him going into this season versus what our expectations are for him going into next season if he stays, right? And those are obviously 2 different things. I could hear the argument for below, and I understand that isn't what you asked me to do, so I apologize for not just making a decision for you. But I'm still pretty comfortable in meeting, just because I think, at least not talking for the whole fan base, but talking for us specifically, right? I think going into the year, we were pretty understanding of what his role was going to be, which was depth scoring and puck protection. But he really just kind of had like a roller coaster of a year. There was a lot of, peaks and valleys within this season for him.
Yeah, I don't know. We had him in below expectations the midpoint in the season, and I don't know if he had 47 points this season, 17 goals, 30 assists. We talked about him a little bit last week, where his point total has obviously dipped from his the last 5 seasons. He had 60, 58, 57, 56 last 4 seasons where he was 50 to 60 point range. Back down to 47, which is more in line with probably his career average. He looked like he lost a step throughout the season, and I feel like we were expecting him to replicate what he did last year, which is maybe unfair of us. But when you're that consistent for a 5-year span, I don't know if it's unfair to ask a guy to do it again. You know what I mean? So I asked you to convince me one way or the other, but I almost think I'm going to go against you and say that I think he might still belong in below expectations, even if it's not as if like he is below expectations and I'm mad at him. I think he's below expectations, and this is just him getting a little older and his role being a little less emphasized. He was still playing a lot of top 6 minutes, which bothered me to no end, which is probably part of the reason why I also believe it's below expectations, because for a top 6 forward, even though that's an over deployment of him at this point in his career, he just wasn't as productive as I had hoped he'd be, because he just couldn't. It didn't feel like he could keep up with the pace of play in some of the instances. I don't know. I think I've convinced myself, no thanks to you, that it's below expectations. So we're gonna have to arm wrestle for where to put him here.
We're not. I'm totally fine with him going below.
No.
I have absolutely no issue with that. Like I said, this is okay. Well, I still am down for below. So
Okay.
Yeah. No. This is a like I said. This is I think kind of like a low end meeting expectations. It's a tough one. This is another one where, like, at the halfway point in the season versus the rest of the year, our expectations were a lot lower. So maybe that is an argument for why he should be below from, what we thought going into the year. That's fair.
Cool. Next up. Oh my goodness. I don't want to have this I don't want to
This
have
one's a
this
weird
conversation,
one.
Scotty. I
This
don't want to
one's
have
just-
this conversation.
It's a weird one. It's just, like it's just weird because like obviously we know Jeff Petrie's struggles and we know his limitations on the ice. And I don't think anyone is like super pleased with how Jeff Petrie played this season, but I mean, going into the year, we were also talking about him being like third pair or even seventh D man. So like,
I will tell you this: I will not put him in above expectation or exceeding expectations.
no,
I'm not going to do
no,
that.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, man, like, yeah, we were like third pair, and that's really what he should be. I've gone on the record. I said it last week when we talked
I'm
about.
okay with below. I've decided. I think below is my
But is
take
that
here.
recency bias talking? Is that us
No.
looking at what we saw and that's what we got out of him rather than what we expected at the start of the season? Because
No.
we did have him in meeting expectations at the halfway point of the season.
Yeah,
We
but
did mid-season.
see, but we were flipped there. I was the one that was like, I think you have to put him in meeting, and you were like, I think he should be at the bottom.
Yeah.
And now
All
we're
right. All
doing
right.
the opposite.
We'll put him in-
Which is
we'll
like
put him in-
fine.
no, it's fine.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, brother. I'm okay with that. But it's like to me, this is like yes, we had him as like third pair, even seventh D man in some of these conversations. He didn't do that, but that doesn't mean that he like I don't know. Is it too dramatic to say that doesn't mean he should have? Like
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that was just because he played more that automatically means like oh he exceeded expectations. Like he didn't do very well in that increased role. So like I'm in that role that was bigger than we had initially thought he was going to get. So like if the increased the larger role than we expected doesn't just single-handedly mean that he exceeded if he didn't do well in it. And I think that like I'm not going to put him in failing for that reason. But I also think I'm pretty comfortable with below.
No, I mean, we also knew what Jeff Petrie was when we got him, right? Like to put him in failing would be like if we thought he was going to play second pair D and he sucked at it. Like we knew he was probably at this point in his career, he was going to be like veteran leader, third pair defenseman. But like instead, he was asked to play 20 minutes a night and getting burned on the outside constantly. Like this is just he was over deployed because Justin Holl wasn't the option they thought he was going to be on the right side. So I mean, I think below expectations is fine. I don't want to talk in a circle. Let's do one more. We'll move on from Jeff Petrie. That one's just, I feel like Jeff Petrie is just always going to be controversial. So
honestly, I think, I'm pretty comfortable with where we put him. I'm going to ask you to start with your boy here.
My boy.
Because he had a very, very interesting season.
Yeah. So the positives are he set a new career high in goals, assists, and points. He played 75 games played, and that's part of the reason why it happened. Last year, he set a career high in 56 games played with 29 points. This year, he had 75 games played and 33 points. So really, the point per game took a dip this year. And the guy we saw last year, who was just a force on every single line, and everyone wanted to play with him because he'd get in the corners and he would win the puck battles and he'd set up his teammates. Like that guy, we only saw in flashes this season. And yes, you could make the same argument with Rasmussen. We made with Kopp just yesterday that he was asked to play a different role with that shutdown checking line of Kopp, Fisher, Rasmussen. But at the same time, like I just feel like there were a lot of games where Rasmussen, and I still like Rasmussen, and I think this is just who he is, right? He's inevitably a bottom six winger, and he's going to be fine at that. That is fine. Not everyone can be a top six. Like, yes, I understand. He was taken 9th overall in 2017, and bottom six winger out of that's going to be a bummer. But it was a reach when he was taken. We've had that conversation too.
Previous regime too. Like
previous regime.
We're gonna talk about Ken Holland till we're blue in the face. That's great, man. He's not here anymore.
But Rasmussen is an effective bottom six player. but I had higher expectations coming into this year just because of how good he was last season.
Right.
And he did not meet those expectations. And of course, then he got hurt. But again, we're not holding that against him. I think below expectations because of the fact that my expectations were raised after last year. Now, this year coming up, I'll have lowered my expectations a little bit for Michael Rasmussen. But just because last season set my expectations higher for him, I'm bummed that this is what we got this season.
Yeah, this is kind of the, I guess I'll call it downside of having, like a visual representation of all of these, like tiers is like people are going to look at this and, do like not listen to what we're saying and just do like the instant, like, oh my goodness, they think that, Michael Rasmussen and Jeff Petrie are in the same caliber or something like that. And that's just like obviously not true. But as far as, pure expectations set out for him, I think that he also was below. It's just not all below expectations are the same. These are all individual in a vacuum to each, individual player, obviously. So, I agree with you. I think that he had such a good year last season that it kind of hiked up, maybe even unfairly, the expectations going into this season for him. And I think that, next season we are going to be a lot more, I don't know, understanding, I guess is the word, of like what his role on the team is going to be. And I kind of expect him to be a perennial meeting expectations for the rest of his contract after this season.
Yeah, I think we understand that he's probably a 30-point player.
Yeah.
Last year, he was on a half point per game, over a half point per game pace.
30 and play good defense and the bottom 6, he will be worth the contract.
Right. It's just last year he had 30 and 56. He was over half point per game. So I was like, oh boy, he might be finding his scoring touch. And that didn't happen. Yeah, dude. So tomorrow we have to recap the Griffins game too. Let's not forget that the Griffins play on Wednesday. We have a lot more players to get to, and a lot of very notable players are left. Raymond, Sider, and DeBrincat. And I actually have to add Simon Edvinsson to this list as well. So, I mean, the final day of player evals is going to be incredible. We might actually, this might be with the Griffins recap in there. This might end up being two more episodes instead of one, just because of the caliber of players we have left. So, I don't know.
I would agree with that.
We'll figure it out. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Scotty, any final thoughts? Any final thoughts, buddy?
I don't think so. We ball.
We do ball. Back with a new episode tomorrow. So stay tuned. Same time, same place. See your team every day.
Yeah.